Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video I'm going to be talking about my leveling strategy for the Druid class once Diablo 4 goes live in about a week's time. Keep in mind the Druid class is really weak early game compared to something like a Rogue, a Necromancer or a Sorcerer, so you won't feel particularly powerful until you get further into the game and unlock some of the really powerful legendary combinations that the Druid has available. For leveling, I will be doing a somewhat complex strategy where I'll be respecing in Act 4 simply because Pulverize becomes by far the best option in Act 4, but until then it's quite weak and you'll be struggling against bosses. From level 1 until Act 4 I'll therefore be relying on the power of landslide. Luckily in Act 2 we get some really powerful Codex of Power options for landslide, and although the skill feels quite clunky early on, it's incredibly powerful for killing those elites and killing those bosses, so your only real problem is dealing with trash mobs, and as we all know the trash mobs in Diablo 4 are super weak. So I believe landslide, respec in Act 4 into Pulverize is the best option for leveling. As always, I hope this video keeps you informed and inspired. Enjoy! This here is the leveling skill tree I'll be using from level 1 until we reach Act 4. Now, of course, I don't know what level you'll be by the time you reach Act 4. This is not information that's available yet. However, I think 33 is probably a pretty good guess. First of all, we're grabbing Stormstrike and Enhanced Stormstrike, simply because Stormstrike gives us that 25% damage reduction, and it's probably by far the best generator for the Druid. Down in our primary skills, we'll be speccing into Landslide. Landslide feels really clunky, but the single target damage against elites and bosses is super high, especially once you grab the Primal Landslide. What this rune does is whenever you stun or immobilize an enemy, you gain a stack. Each of these stacks makes it so that the next Landslide you cast is a guaranteed critical strike with 40% increased critical strike damage. That then makes us unlock our defensive skills. First of all, we're going to grab Earthen Bulwark. It gives us a big shield, helps you stay alive for so much longer. More importantly though, it gives us the Unstoppable, so when you get CC'd, you can pop this skill and you'll break out of it instantly and be able to move again and won't die. Finally, we grab the Preserving Earthen Bulwark for the 18% base life as Fortify. We need quite a lot of Fortify, as you'll see later on. Now, there's a choice to make between Debilitating Roar and Blood Howl. Blood Howl is a really good skill. It's basically a free potion. With the first passive here, it can reset your cooldown. And if we look over here in the aspects available, you can see in Act 1, we have an aspect for Blood Howl which increases your critical strike chance by 5%. The reason I choose not to spec into it is because we already have the guaranteed crits, and because Debilitating Roar is just really powerful. What Debilitating Roar does is it reduces the damage of nearby enemies by 70% for 4 seconds, so the mobs for those 4 seconds will be hitting like wet noodles. We then have the Enhanced Debilitating Roar, which gives us even more Fortify. That just means that Debilitating Roar and Earthen Bulwark combined will give us 40% Fortify, which is really high, which just means that you'll be able to cap out your Fortify in 2 rotations of these 2 skills. And finally, we have the Preserving Debilitating Roar. When you use the skill, you heal for 4% of your maximum life for each second of its duration. That's a total of 16% heal, which is almost as good as Blood Howl at level 1. For passives, if you're suffering from Spirit, you need Abundance. This just helps your Stormstrike generate even more Spirit, so it's really nice to have. And also Vigilance, incredibly good passive skill. It just makes it so whenever you pop one of your defensive skills, you gain 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds, which of course stacks really nicely with our damage reduction from Stormstrike. Finally, down the companion skills. As we all know, the companion skills are incredibly good for leveling. First of all, you want Poison Creeper. It's probably the best companion skill Druid has available. It helps us with generating terror motes because it's a big AoE immobilize. The first rune isn't particularly impressive, it just increases the duration of the immobilize, but the Ferocious Poison Creeper is really powerful. What it does is it increases the duration of the poison, but it does not reduce the damage per tick, so your damage will just be increased by 3 seconds basically, and you'll be doing exactly the same damage per tick. You now have a choice to make between Ravens and Wolves, both really good. I take Ravens simply because with the Landslide skill we already have really good single target damage, and the Ravens just have that bit of AoE which helps you clear that much more. Finally, if we look down at our Wrath skills, we take Neurotoxins, not particularly impressive, we just want the Envenom for the increased critical strike damage. Now, with these skills, you'll really start to feel the power increase in Act 2. If I go over here, I've made a little spreadsheet where I show all of the legendary aspects I'll be picking up. Of course, Night Howler's aspect, you don't have to pick this up, it's just an option if you prefer Night or Blood Howl over Debilitating Roar. In Act 2, This is where we start to pick up our pace. We first of all grab Ballistic Aspect, which makes it so that whenever we have Fortify, remember we always have Fortify from Earth and Bulwark and Debilitating Roar, that our Earth skills will gain +2 ranks. That just means we'll be running around with a level 7 Landslide, which is incredibly powerful. We also have Aspect of the Quicksand, which makes our Earth skills slow enemies for 25 seconds. Now, this is pretty nice for kiting mobs, but it's incredibly powerful combined with a Crashstone aspect, because Crashstone aspect makes it so that our Earth skills deal 40% more critical strike damage to crowd control enemies, and slow is a crowd control. Now, you can already see here, between Crashstone aspect, between the 40% crit damage from Primal Landslide and the 30% crit damage down here from the Envenom passive, we have a lot of crit damage, and mobs and bosses will die incredibly fast. We then have Edgemaster's aspect. This is just a generic damage increase. You want to grab this on pretty much every single leveling build, just for that extra damage when you're at full spirit. Finally, in Act 3, we have a few defensive options here. Aspect of Might is incredibly powerful in combination with our Storm Strike, because it gives us a total of 15% damage reduction, which is insane. Like, you won't die once you pick up this. We also have Aspect of the Mending Stone, which just increases the duration of our Earth and Bulwark and gives us some barrier regen while we're in combat. And then finally we have Aspect of Retaliation, which increases our damage based on our Fortify. Again, we'll always have Fortify because of our defensive skills, so I'll probably plop Aspect of Retaliation on our Amulet. In Act 4, we gain Aspect of the Ursine Horror, and at this point we'll be speccing out of Landslide and making a Pulverize build instead. Once you reach Act 4 and you pick up Aspect of the Ursine Horror and Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast, we're going to completely respec our setup with Landslide and swap into a Pulverized, completely werebear-oriented setup instead. The reason for this is because Aspect of the Ursine Horror makes our Pulverize into an Earth skill, so we can gain all the damage increases from Act 2 in our Pulverize as well. And on top of that, we can pick up Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast, which will just increase our damage a lot while the ultimate is active and really help with bosses. I think, in general, Landslide is really clunky, and once we're able to swap into Pulverize and gain all the damage from all the aspects here, Pulverize will be by far the best option for leveling. So, once we reach Act 4, we'll just press the button that respecs our setup completely, and now we'll be running with a werebear-oriented setup. First of all, we'll be grabbing Grizzly Rage. We won't do this as the first thing, of course, but it's just important to know how this skill works. When you pop it, you'll only be able to use werebear skills for this ultimate's duration. So, it's very important that we pick up as many werebear skills as possible in this setup, otherwise we won't be able to use the skills while our ultimate is active. That's why we grab Maul. It gives us a bit of Fortify, which is nice. Other than that, the skill's really underwhelming, but we need it so we can generate Spirit while Grizzly Rage is active. Now, we also swap out a Landslide, completely respec this skill, and we put all our points into Pulverize. We grab the Enhanced Pulverize. Just for this, every 12 seconds we have, not a chance, but it's guaranteed to overpower, which is just a really big damage slam. With all our Fortify stacked up, this will deal a hell of a lot of damage. And then finally, we grab Primal Pulverize, just to reduce the damage of enemies, since we're not able to run Storm Strike anymore. For the passives, we keep Abundance just to keep our spirit up so we can cast even more Pulverizers, which is really nice. And we take Predatory Instincts, which increases our crit chance by 6% when we're close. Now, keep in mind, Pulverize is a melee skill, so we'll always be close, so we'll always have this 6% increased crit. And our defensive skills, nothing's really changed. Just keep in mind, you want to use Earth and Bulwark before you use the Grizzly Rage ultimate, otherwise you won't be able to use it while you're in the werebear form. And so it's just important to use this first before you pop your ultimate. Debilitating Roar, nothing's changed here. These two skills still give us an incredible amount of Fortify, combined with Enhanced Maul, we gain even more Fortify. Again, we also keep Vigilance for that 15% damage reduction, super nice. In the companion skills, we completely spec out of these. The main reason is we're not really able to use any of them while we're in our Grizzly Rage ultimate. And instead, we're going to put the points into Trample. Trample is a really good skill. They buffed it a lot for the Server Slam event, and with Enhanced Trample, it deals a lot of damage. So this is also really good for just chunking out elites and bosses early on. It does have a pretty short cooldown, so you'll be able to use it a lot. And then with the Savage Trample, it gives us some spirit regen, which is incredibly nice. We spec out of Envenom since we don't have any source of poison, and instead we put our points into Crushing Earth. What this passive does is that Earth skills deal 50% increased damage to slowed, stunned, or immobilized enemies. Crushing Earth is incredibly nice, and it doesn't have the downside of Wild Impulses, where we gain more spirit costs, Instead, it just deals damage, more damage when we slow enemies. Keep in mind, everything's always slowed because of the aspect of the quicksand, so it's just a flat 15% damage increase all of the time. We also grab Safeguard, which just makes our critical strikes fortify us even more. As you can see, we'll be having Fortify all of the time. Actually, it might not even be necessary to grab Safeguard, and you can even spec out of this and put those 3 points into something else. Finally, Stone Guard, it just makes it so that our Earth skills deal a bit more damage when we're above 50% Fortify. We're always above 50% Fortify, so you could even max this out, take this points out of Safeguard instead. We also grab Provocation. This is an incredibly powerful passive. It just makes it so that when we've been a werebear for 20 seconds, we'll gain an overpower attack again. This works really well in combination with Trample, make Trample deal so much damage on bosses, but you can also just use it to increase the damage of Pulverize, and as you can see with the 12 seconds here and the 20 seconds down here, we'll have a lot more overpowered attacks. Finally, we grab Grizzly Rage. This ultimate is incredibly powerful. It increases our damage by 20% and our damage reduction by 20% while it's active. If you kill 10 mobs while this is active, you can have a 20-second duration. And then we also grab the Bestial Rampage skill down here. Earth and Might is better, but you need a legendary aspect for this. So for now, I think Bestial Rampage is probably best just for that 20% extra damage, which is active pretty much all of the time. Looking at the Spirit Boons for the Deer, the best option here is Wariness. All of the other options are pretty terrible. The Deer in general is super underwhelming, but 10% damage reduction from elites, really nice. We grab the Critical Strike chance. Again, we want to crit as much as often because of the Crashstone aspect, which just increases our critical strike damage. So grabbing that 5% extra critical strike chance combined with the, I forget the name of it, Predatory Instincts, just gives us a bunch of base crit, which is super, super nice. What was I looking at? Oh, Spirit Boons. For the Wolf, we want to pick up Energize. This just makes it so that we have a lucky hit chance to restore 10 spirit. Super, super nice. It will help you just cast even more pulverizers and not have to worry as much about spirit. And then we grab Calamity, which extends the duration of our Grizzly Rage by 25%, so we can just have even more uptime on the skill. Finally, Calm Before the Storm. Again, we won't be lucky hitting much, but it will be enough for this passive, or Spirit Boon rather, to feel really nice and keep up our Grizzly Rage ultimate. Yeah, so that's pretty much my leveling strategy. Keep in mind, I'm not saying this is the absolute best and most optimized way to level your druid. I just think, looking at the Codex of Power options available, that this is how you get the most bang for your buck. I think the werebear setup is probably going to be the best for clearing the capstone dungeon, especially with the Grizzly Rage ultimate. You gain a lot of damage potential. Also flat damage increases, and then again the druid is just so tanky that you won't be dying to the boss at least, so even if it takes some time to clear that capstone dungeon, you won't die while doing so. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, keep in mind this is a bit more of a complex leveling strategy where I respec in Act 4, but that's simply because we're able to make our Pulverize into an Earth skill and gain all the damage increases that we had for our Landslide and put those on Pulverize instead. On top of that, we gain a bunch of extra crit damage from the Grizzly Rage ultimate and a bunch of just flat damage increase. Keep in mind the big downside of the werebear setup is that we're not able to really run any sort of vulnerability, and therefore we won't be able to rely on that 20% damage increase, but I think the damage you get from the Grizzly Rage ultimate more than makes up for it. You could also choose to not run with the Bestial Rampage passive, key passive, but instead put it into Earth and Might. Again, we won't be lucky hitting much because Pulverize is a bit slow in its attack speed. However, you'll have really good clear. The boss damage won't be particularly high, but it will be more than enough to clear that capstone dungeon. Once again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you're excited for Diablo 4 launch. I for sure am, and I'm going to be blasting on launch.